Hi, everybody. This is Paul Gerard. I'm a student loan consultant with the American Dental Education Association, ADEA. This module is on how to finance your dental school education. We're going to cover a number of items in this module. We'll take a look at cost considerations, and we'll take a brief look at smart budgeting, responsible borrowing, and how that can lead to responsible repayment. We'll take a look at your student loan portfolio, what kind of loans you may be taking out to finance your dental school education. And we'll wrap this up with some action items for you and a listing of some resources that may help you as you look to finance your dental school education. Now we start with some comments on the cost of attendance at your dental school. Your financial aid office can provide you with what's called an estimated cost of attendance, also referred to as a financial aid budget. And then that cost of attendance, you'll see items such as tuition and fees, room and board expenses, transportation, personal expenses, your dental school kit, etc. A whole listing of items that make up your cost of attendance. And that changes slightly from year to year. We would encourage you to look at that cost of attendance or financial aid budget number and focus on those items you have some control over, such as room and board, living expenses, transportation, etc. And try to establish a realistic budget that you can live on each year. Notice that consumer debt is not part of the cost of attendance. You cannot get financial aid to cover things like credit card payments. So if you have any consumer debt, we would strongly encourage you to take care of that and pay it off completely before you start dental school. Always work with your financial aid office to seek free money or gift money first. This is grants and scholarships. They may be available at your school based on merit, need, or perhaps a combination of both. And remember, if you get grants and scholarships, that will help reduce how much money you have to borrow for dental school. You may also want to consider what are called service commitment scholarship programs. These are programs such as the National Health Service Corps and the Armed Forces, where in exchange for a commitment to service, they will help you fund your dental school education with a scholarship and with stipend assistance. Some additional cost considerations. Perhaps this goes without saying, but never ever borrow more than you actually need. Just because you can borrow up to the full cost of attendance with a combination of direct unsubsidized and direct plus minus any other financial aid you're getting, that doesn't mean that you have to. So take a good look again at your budget and your cost of attendance, and don't borrow the full cost if you don't need it. Plan to pay back what you borrow. All we mean by that is you will hear about forgiveness provisions such as the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. We would encourage you not to necessarily rely on the federal government to forgive your debt. Rather, as you start dental school, if you're going to have to borrow, always be focusing on how much you are going to have to pay back when you graduate from dental school. So plan to pay back what you borrow. We'd encourage you to be cautious about private loans. We have a separate repayment module on the differences between federal loans and private loans on the Go Dental site that we'd encourage you to take a look at. If you are considering private loans in lieu of or in addition to federal loans, always talk with your financial aid officer first. Now, there are actually two approaches to borrowing. Some students will borrow up to the full cost of attendance right out of the gate, and then once they get settled in dental school, perhaps after a couple of months, they'll return funds if they are not needed. If this is your approach, be sure that you work with the financial aid office and you return any funds that you don't need within 120 days of the start of school, because if you do that, it's as though you never borrowed that money. In other words, you don't pay any interest on that amount and you don't pay any loan fees on that amount. So once again, if you borrow the full cost of attendance and you find out you don't need all those funds, try and return those within 120 days, but work with the financial aid office to do that. You may want to take the other approach, which is to borrow under the cost of attendance and see if you can get by on less money, knowing that later on in the year you can borrow up to the full cost if you need to. One thing that does is it delays the interest accrual because interest only accrues on the amount that's dispersed. So if you delay borrowing, as long as you don't run short of funds and you give the financial aid office time to process your application, if you delay the disbursement of some of your funds, that will delay the interest accrual and help reduce, at least by a little bit, how much you'll have to repay. Some comments on smart budgeting and how that can lead to responsible borrowing and responsible repayment. If you make poor budgeting choices in school and you're living beyond your means, you may be forced into a repayment plan after graduation that you really don't need. For example, you may really want to be aggressive in repayment, but because you made poor budgeting decisions during school, you may be forced into a lengthier repayment plan, and that may not be exactly part of your repayment strategy. So making poor budget choices during school can lead to an unwanted repayment plan after you graduate and having your hand forced into a plan you really don't want. If you borrow into budget, we've already mentioned this, you can borrow more later if needed, and that will help reduce or delay the interest accrual on your student loans, because once again, interest doesn't start building up or accruing until the loan is dispersed. Be sure you meet all financial aid office deadlines, because that will help put yourself in a position to get the best financial aid available, especially grants and scholarships if those are available from your school. Now, in terms of your student loan portfolio, this is a listing of the different loans that you may have access to while you are in dental school. We're going to focus on the direct unsubsidized and direct plus loans on the next two slides. Those are federal loans that make up the bulk of many dental school students' portfolios. Your school may offer what are called campus-based loans, the health profession student loan, loans for disadvantaged students, and your school may actually have some institutional loans that come directly from the school. Check with your financial aid office. We've already referenced private loans, and once again, we would encourage you to talk with your financial aid office before taking out any private loans. The direct unsubsidized loan, also called the Stafford loan, is what many consider to be the foundation loan for dental school borrowing. So you can expect to borrow from this loan in almost all cases if you are going to be borrowing for dental school. The annual limit is $40,500 per year, but there are a number of dental schools, in fact, probably most dental schools will prorate that amount up based on the budget duration. You can check with your financial aid office about that. These loans have fixed interest rates, but the rates change on new loans every July 1, and then the rate on the new loan is fixed for the life of the loan. So you may get out of dental school with 4 different unsubsidized loans, but each one is likely to have a different interest rate. These loans come due 6 months after graduation, and there are multiple repayment provisions or options available for you on these loans, including the income-driven repayment plans. These loans are eligible for forgiveness if you meet certain conditions, including forgiveness under the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. Now, the second federal loan is the Direct Plus loan, also called Grad Plus. You'll notice that these are loans to take out if you need additional assistance beyond the direct unsubsidized loan that we talked about on the previous slide. Note that there is no annual limit for these loans other than the cost of attendance minus all other aid, including the direct unsubsidized. Just like direct unsubsidized, these have fixed interest rates. The rates change on new loans every July 1. So once again, if you graduate with multiple Direct Plus loans, each one is likely to have a different interest rate. And note that the rate is always 1 full percentage point higher than the direct unsubsidized loan. All the more reason to try to avoid these if you can, but many dental school students take these loans out. These loans also come due 6 months after graduation, and they have multiple repayment provisions, including the income-driven repayment plans. These loans are also eligible for forgiveness if you meet certain conditions, and they are eligible for forgiveness under the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. Now, we wrap up this module on financing the dental school education with some action items for you. We've talked about the importance of establishing a relationship with the financial aid office. You're going to be working with them for at least 4 years if you need financial aid. So be sure you know who they are and establish a good working relationship with them. They can help you keep abreast of any changes that happen to financial aid, to the programs and repayment options that may impact you as you go through dental school. Establish a realistic budget and stick to it. And as we've said before, never borrow more than you really need. You don't have to borrow up to the full cost of attendance if you really don't need that much money. Be sure that if you have any consumer debt that you pay it off completely before you start dental school, because you cannot get financial aid to cover consumer debts. And any loans that you had prior to starting dental school, work with your loan servicer to be sure that you are in good standing on those loans when you matriculate. Now, this is a listing of some of the resources that are available to you. If you go to adia.org, look for what we call the red ribbon, and you'll see information for current students and residents. And then there's a section called financial resources for students. Lots of information for you there, including a link to the AAMC ADIA Dental Loan Organizer and Calculator, which we would strongly encourage you to take a look at and to use. It is free for 7 years, and it's designed specifically for dental school students. Also, always be sure that you track your loans on your loan servicer's website, and a listing of all your federal student loans, including those from college or perhaps post-bac programs, can be found at studentaid.gov. We hope this information has been beneficial to you. Best wishes for every success in dental school.